think it's working. Hey, everybody, welcome. As is my tradition, I like to get involved in Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and all the celebrations and provoke people. I'm the internet provocateur. I like to provoke people to think, to consider that what they're doing might not be true. I want you to consider what is true. If you care about the truth, then you're at the right place at the right time. If you don't care about the truth, I'm going to provoke you to care a little bit more, and there's different levels to that. Some people care at the Jerry Springer level, they just care to figure out what gets them through the day. Truth for them is figuring out how to pay the bills. And I understand that. And that's, part of my life is helping people do that. And then there's what I call the Dr. Phil truth. We go from Jerry Springer to Dr. Phil. It's more about relationships, and it's more about people, and it's all about negotiation. It's what I feel, what you feel, and let's negotiate through our feelings. And, that's a good place to be. That's better than Jerry Springer. But I'd like to provoke you guys to go to a higher level. I'd like to provoke you to consider that there is something called truth, and it's not relative, and it's not based on culture. It's not based on time, that there is a truth that has stood before the foundation of the world and will always be true, never changed, will be and forever will be true. There are different shadows and seasons when truth is revealed to us at different levels and different nuances. Just like a rainbow, we get to see different colors of it, and based on our perspective, we're going to see different facets of it, and we should all embrace each other's both blindness and light. We should help each other through this process, but I believe there's an absolute truth, and if you don't, you're going to have trouble with this conversation. You should probably go listen to somebody else, because I believe there's an absolute. And here we have, this is the perfect day. A lot of people are celebrating this guy's birthday, the guy that walked on water. And he says, you search the scriptures, for in them you think they have eternal life, but they testify of me, and you will not come to me that you might have life. He referred to himself as the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me. And he made a lot of pretty radical statements. And, you really have, if you study this guy, if you study this baby Jesus, December 25th, born in a manger kind of guy, which hardly any of that's true, even if you read the book. If you study the guy, you'll realize that he was a radical. He was what we call a resistance. He was that guy who was resisting the modern day idea of things, and he stood for truth above all else. He wanted people to know the truth. And he said a couple statements. He said that you shall know, behold, embrace. You shall have relationship. You shall have covenant with the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And he believed absolute certainty that the adherence, the embrace, the total consumption of a human being's life to embrace the truth was the way to freedom. And so with that being said, I want to say that there's a whole lot of people who really don't care. Their version, let me start off with this conversation first. When we have this conversation, we want to start off with, are you offended? Because it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or if you're non-Christian or if you're Jewish or you're non-Jewish. You can be a religious Jew and a non-religious Jew. You're going to find some reason, most people are going to find some reason to be offended in this season. Well, they said happy holidays instead of saying Merry Christmas, or they didn't say happy Hanukkah. They said, whatever it is. Let's not be a people that's offended by the conversation of what is true. If someone has a belief system, they understand God in a certain way, let them, allow them, embrace them, love them, give them a big hug. You don't have to say Merry Christmas if they say Merry. You don't have to say Happy Hanukkah. Give them a big hug, love them, say have a great day, whatever you want to do. Just don't be offended. Stop with the offense. There's so much of that stuff going on. So in this conversation, one of the things I do not want to do, even though this conversation is potentially offensive, I don't want anybody to be offended. I want you to agree or disagree and move on. Let's, take what you can take, get what you get, and move on from there. So I want to provoke you guys to come to the decision that you love the truth. That's the only thing. That's my number one life's purpose. Now, I do a lot of things in my life, but my number one life's purpose is to get as many people as I can to love the truth. That is my ultimate goal. And so I want you to consider some things. In this conversation of what is the truth, I'm going to bounce over to this guy right here. If you guys have ever seen this movie, there's a character inside the movie called The Matrix. And the last scene that you see him in, he's referred to as Mr. Reagan. As you wish, Mr. Reagan. And what he says right here at this moment as he's holding up a piece of steak is there's the matrix, there's the red pill and the blue pill, and everybody decides whether they're going to take the red pill or the blue. Do you really want to have the facade taking off your eyes? Do you really want to move into what is true? Because there's a cost involved in understanding the truth. There's a cost. When everyone else is living a lie and you embrace the truth, there's a cost. And so this guy decides near the middle of his life, he decides he does not want to live in the truth anymore. He doesn't want to know. And he says, I don't want to know nothing. That's what he said. He says, put me back into the matrix, put my blinders back on. I just want to live a happy life, and I don't want to be in truth. I don't want to live the truth. And I realize that the majority of people on the planet is this person. It's okay. I'm not mad at him. I would like to find the few. There's a very small group of people that care. And if you're not one of those people, it's okay. I'm not mad at you. I still want to be friends with you. I still want to do business with you. I still want to have a relationship with you. And I understand that truth is a difficult thing. When everyone else is going the opposite direction, I understand that truth is hard. Here's a statement that we're moving into. Now you get the preamble. You get the preface of hope you're not offended and truth is hard. I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about what people refer to as Christmas Eve. It's also the first day of Hanukkah. For those of you who want to participate on the lighting of the first Hanukkah candle, that's going to be an hour from now. I'm going to do a truth conversation now. 8 o'clock, we're going to be doing the first lighting, and we're going to talk about Hanukkah from a truth perspective, and it'll be fun. So I want to talk about when truth stops mattering. To what degree do you care about truth? And when does truth stop mattering to you? How important is truth to you? Is it okay for you to tell your kids stories as their children that they believe that are total lies? Is it okay to tell them about Santa Claus? Is it okay to tell them about the Easter Bunny? Is it okay to tell them about the Tooth Fairy, and then later on they realize you've been lying to them their whole life? Is that okay? Can you live a life that's true? And what does it do to a person when everything in their life is a truth or a half-truth, when it's mixed and mingled with lies and error? And even if our intention is true, even if our intention is, well, I was just trying to give them a happy life, is that okay? Well, when does truth stop mattering? At what degree? You have to decide. You shouldn't just live your life based on what your parents handed you. Just because your parents handed you a bunch of lies doesn't mean you have to hand your kids the same stories. Decide if truth really matters to you. I wrote this in one of my blog posts. We call, and this is for, I'll just read it. What we call Christianity today is a mockery to truth and an embarrassment to reason. It is the main reason the world hates us, not because we are holders of truth, but that our truths are unreasonable, not rational, not based on reality or kingdom. Jesus was not his name. Christmas was not his birthday. Easter was not his resurrection. Church is not and was not ever supposed to be a building. The prayer of salvation is a mockery to the gospel, but for those who profess to be followers of the truth seems to not matter. The reason for the season come out. Now, I wrote this in one of my rantings back in last December, probably, when it was getting ready for the holiday season. And here it is. Doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or you're Christian or you're you read the Quran or whatever it is. It seems like the majority of people who follow a religion or a book don't follow it based on an apprehension to truth. They follow it based on a regurgitation of idea or a story or ideal that almost no one in any religion all over the world, almost no one in any religion considers whether what they believe is true. And so we have thousands of years of a story that's being told from a corrupt system of religion, being told and retold and told and retold, and almost no one of the millions and millions of followers inside the organization consider, and when they do find out, they don't care. And for me, it seems unfathomable. It seems unfathomable that I would go to a church where 90% of their doctrines are not true, when their core foundations are not true. And I would love to get more people to believe that way. And for whatever reason, everybody's in a different place. For whatever reason, they're okay with calling the one who called himself truth by a name that's not his name. His name was Yeshua, and there was a reason for his name. 6,000 years they were waiting for a Messiah to come with the name Yeshua, God with us. They were waiting for the one who would be named this name, and we've taken a corrupt church system who went from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to English and translated it, and no one cares that that's not his name. It doesn't fulfill, the name Jesus doesn't fulfill any prophecy. The name Yeshua was given before the foundation of the world, breathed by the creator of the universe to be a name for a specific season and a specific time. His birthday, September somewhere around 11th, the feast of coming together, where God joins with man. He had 6,000 years of showing the same feast day over and over and over, called the Feast of Tabernacles, when God dwells with man. And the Messiah was to be born on a specific day with a specific name. And so what we did, somewhere around the year 300, we went and took the pagan lives of the world and we married their dates and their festivals and their seasons. We took his name, we changed it. We took his birthday and changed it. We took everything and changed it. Well, I personally think it's pretty offensive. I think it's pretty important to actually use the right stuff. I mean, if he went through all that trouble to mark a moment in time and mark a date and season, even if you weren't a believer, you would think, well, that is kind of jacked up to take some guy who called himself the truth and change almost everything about him. You would think that there would be more people that are a little more passionate about the fact that this guy who we serve, called the truth, almost nothing that we say about him is true. So here's a scenario. I'm not going to go through all these because we did it last year and we did it in Easter time. But just as a poke, I just want to poke you guys, just want to provoke you with this idea, this thought that God in the scriptures ordained a festival, a mountaintop experience. The people of Israel went ahead and changed it. They went and took a golden calf, and it was a really bad day. The next day was a really bad day. God had a plan for people to reach God, and they changed it, and they called it the Tower of Babel. And they said, I'm going to reach God by ourselves, by our own effort, by our own strength. We're going to do it our own way. And the day after that was a really bad day. And we have story after story. When Adam and Eve gave birth to their two sons, one son came to the Creator and said, I'm going to worship God the way he wants me to worship him. And he brought a lamb. And the other son says, well, I want to worship God my own way because, he knows my heart. And it doesn't mean that to me. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it the way he said do it. I want to do it my own way. So he brought him vegetables instead. And the very next day was a really bad day. For him, it was a bad day. And here we have over and over and over a symbol and a story of a time where he says, I want you to do it. I want you to do it this way. And then we go and we take the paganism and the symbolism of the world and the things that he actually forbids us to do. We take the lamb off the Easter table and we put a pig on it. We take the tree, which I'm not even going to get into the ugliness of where that tree came from. We take this ugly pagan tree and we stick it in our house and we worship him with a thing that was defilement before it was brought in. Before it was brought into Christianity, it was defilement. Well, I know a lot of people say, well, it doesn't mean that to me. Well, it didn't mean that to them either. Here's another story. We have a serpent on a stick. You guys have all seen this. Every ambulance that drives by, you see that picture. Serpent on the stick. When God ordained a serpent on a stick, it was the children of Israel in the wilderness, 1 million people, thousands of them dying of poison. And he says, I'm going to give you a solution. And he takes this serpent and he puts it on a stick and he has Moses do this symbol. He says, I want you to take this symbol and say it and use it in this way, and my people will be healed if they'll look upon it. Well, 250 years later, they took this symbol, they changed its name, and they stuck it in the temple, and they worshipped it. Neheshathan is what they called it. And when God brought his prophet back into the church and destroyed the thing, the next day was a really bad day. He says, you cannot worship me the way you want to worship me. I've ordained ways and times and seasons and days for you to come to me. And if you want to know him, you should want to. It doesn't matter whether it means that to you or not. It doesn't mean that, well, we've redeemed the Christmas tree. Well, we've redeemed December 25th. Well, you can if you want to, if that's what it means to you. We have another scenario here, Samson and Delilah. Samson, because of his covenant, had strength with his creator, had a relationship with him, had the anointing, had the presence of God with his life. He compromised and he gave himself to the ways of the world, and he allowed his hair to be cut. His eyes were gouged out, and not only that day, but for the rest of his life was a really bad day because he separated himself from the truth. He separated himself from the sanctification and the way that God wanted him to live. And he lived his entire life similar to what I consider most churchianity is today. His entire life was blind and grinding out grain for his enemies. That most people who consider themselves believers, lovers of the scriptures and lovers of truth, are in most cases blind and working for somebody else, working for someone else's dream, working for someone else's system. They're not walking in freedom. They're not walking in anointing. They're not walking in power. And I believe, it's my opinion, because I'm going to offer my opinion in here, is my opinion that it's because they've compromised with the world. They've allowed themselves to not be sanctified, to not be separated, to not be doing things God's way, to have their heart and their actions, not just their heart and their actions turned to obedience. The Messiah said that he who loves me, will obey my commandments, and that person will be loved by the Father. And what a lot of people are doing is they're trying to skip that part. They're trying to skip the part of the commandments. They're trying to skip the part where we are obedient to a way. We're obedient to the Messiah said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am going to come and I'm going to show you, repent for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. I'm going to have you show you back to the way. Because in his day, in his season, the entire nation of Israel was going their own way, serving their own version of the Bible. And it's time right now, today is a perfect opportunity because we have Christmas Eve and Hanukkah on the very same day. And so in an hour from now, we're going to do a little Hanukkah story and probably tell a little bit more of this, or a little more of the story of Hanukkah. But this is just to get people provoked to consider that maybe the stuff we were handed for generations might not be the best way to go. That if the Messiah were to, as violently and bloodily make a exclamation point 2,000 years ago in history, that he might have something to say about truth. And that his whole entire life was for the purpose of purifying a people to serve God God's way. And he wants so desperately to bring people back. Now, what a lot of people say, well, it seems like bondage, it seems like restriction. I'm not telling you what it looks like. I'm just telling you to love the truth. Let him tell you what it looks like. You figure out what it looks like. I'm suggesting that you consider that what we've been handed is from a corrupt system. That the world system, the church's system, and the religious system that we've handed, whether you're Jewish, whether it's Judaism or Christianity or whatever it is, the current system is so filled with lies that it's almost impossible to find the truth in it. That's how bad it is. It's very, very corrupt. Here's the story that we're actually living tonight. Tonight's the first candle of Hanukkah. And the first candle is to celebrate a story that happens in Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 44. And the king also sent messengers, a decree to Jerusalem and all the towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow the customs that were foreign to their country. He ordered them not to offer burnt offerings, grain offerings, wine offerings in the temple, and commanded them to treat the Sabbaths and festivals as ordinary work days. They were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. They were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and to unclean animals there. They were forbidden to circumcise their sons, and they were required to make themselves ritually unclean in every way they could, so that they would forget the law which the Lord had given through Moses, and would disobey all of its commands. The penalty for disobeying the king decree was death. Hanukkah was a 9-day battle. It was a battle to come back to what is truth. It was a battle to say, no, we will not worship pagan gods. We're going to worship God, and we're going to do it God's way. And we're going to celebrate the feast days, and we're going to celebrate the Sabbaths, and we're going to do it God's way. And they won the battle. It was a miraculous victory that they won over them. And so these days of the lights are to celebrate that there is a truth, and that we should serve him, and that if we will, the cost might be great, but it's worth every penny. It's worth every drop of blood to serve the Creator, because you only have 70 years on this side. You have 1,000,000 years on the other. The things that you do in serving the truth on this side will reward you throughout eternity. It is worth it to find out what is God's ways, how can I serve him, and to separate ourselves from just because other people can Christianize something or turn it into a biblical justification doesn't mean that it's okay. Truth should be more important than anything else in your life because it determines, well done, good and faithful servant. Did I follow the truth? And so I want to encourage you guys that with this last verse of Scripture, one of the things that the Messiah said was, "Thus you have made the commandment of God of no effect by your tradition." If it is possible to take the very words of the Creator and to nullify them, what is the one thing that he said, the one thing of all the things that he did? Disobedience was bad, but this was the one thing that nullified the very words of God in a person's life. Thus you have made the commandments of God of no effect by your tradition. And how many times through the centuries and through the generations that we continue to repeat over and over and over as the children of God turn themselves to the idols of the world, to the systems of the age, to religious ideals, and don't come to the Creator to have the commandments of God written in their hearts. The new covenant is, I will make a new covenant with my people, and I will write my commandments in their hearts. And they will serve me, priests, all of them being priests and kings to the Most High God. We cannot have it both ways. You can't be a server of mammon and a server of God. You can't be a server of idols and a server of God. You can't do it. And you can say all day long, well, it doesn't mean that to me. What does it mean to him? And so I want to encourage you guys to look. He always, always, always has a better way. The way that the world has, a lot of people say, well, I have so many fond memories. I have so many fond memories of Christmas. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. I have so many fond memories of Christmas, and I don't want to let all that go. Well, you don't have to let go of your memories. He didn't tell you to do that. But one of the things that we do find is that God's way is always better. That there was a time in my life when I thought it was okay to have sex with 10 women. Now I can have as many girlfriends as I want. I can do whatever drugs I want. I can party. I had a life that was determined by my own will. When I found out that restriction was to have one woman, have one wife, and be faithful to her for the rest of my life, it seemed like a hard thing. But it was the very best thing that he could give me. God's commandments are life, and they are liberty, and they're freedom. And when we first look at the restrictions of God, it seems like, well, that seems a little hard. Well, it's not. It's never hard. My yoke is easy, and my burdens are light, and they always lead to freedom. It's only the story that's told in our head from the religious systems that are trying to keep us in that actually tell us this is hard. You can't do this. No, he said it was easy, and it's better. When you let go of paganism, when you let go of adultery, when you let go of darkness, light is always better. Always. Never seen it fail. Now, a person who's half in and half out, that's hard. You got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. That's a hard life. You're not getting the benefit of either one. If you're like go to church on Sunday Christian, you're sleeping around on the weekends, and you're trying to be good on Sunday. You're not getting the benefit of either one because you get the guilt. You get the guilt associated with one, and you're not getting the pleasure or the freedom from the other. Can't be halfway, one way or the other. So I want to provoke you guys. I recorded this to send it out to my list and provoke as many people as I can to consider that maybe there's a higher way. Come out of the world, come out of the system, come in the kingdom. If you guys want to be part of the candle lighting, I'm going to do that in another half an hour from now right here, this same bat channel. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.